Good evening, everyone, and welcome to webinar 6 for the Eureka 3D Marine Seismic Survey. My name is Matt Smith, and I will be taking you through a few slides by way of update for this survey, and we'll just wait for a few moments just to see if there's we've got a few other people registered, so we'll just give them just a few more moments to dial in before we get started. Okay, we might make a start. Maybe if I first go through just a little bit of the meeting formalities. So we've got the recording is already in process. So just to let you know, this webinar is being recorded, and we will publish the webinar on the Eureka website in due course. Hopefully it takes us no more than a couple of days, so 48 hours or so. Hopefully you can all see the presentation that I'm sharing, and I wonder if I could get somebody maybe in the chat to just give us a yes or a thumbs up or something in the chat or the Q&A to let me know that you can see that. Thank you, Freya. So yeah, obviously within that we then have a chat function and a Q&A function tonight, so I'll try and get through the slides as quickly as possible. This is probably more value in the Q&A. I probably won't. Now I've only got one screen here, so I can't check the Q&A whilst presenting. But if you do at any time want to put your questions either into the chat or into the Q&A, then please do let me know, or please do so, and I will review those once I've finished the slides. So once again, just for those of you that have just joined, we've got my name is Matthew Smith. I am working with Pilot Energy to prepare an environment plan seeking approval for the Eureka 3D Marine Seismic Survey. Yeah, this is the 6th webinar in the series, just to keep people up to date with where we're at in the process. Yeah, we'll crack on with the slides. Okay, so for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Eureka 3D Marine Seismic Survey, that's MSS, it's the name of a proposed survey in the Perth Basin region here, just south of Geraldton in Western Australia. Seismic surveys are a technique that's used to explore for petroleum reserves. They are surveys that seek to map and understand whether or not there are petroleum reserves in the area of interest. The Eureka survey, we started consultations on the survey back in February 2023, so nearly 18 months ago now. And for those of you that are interested, you can see the previous 5 webinars to kind of see the journey that we've gone through over those 18 months. But to give you some more details about the activity that we're proposing in terms of timing, its earliest start date is the 1st of January 2025, and the latest finish the 31st of December 2026. And the reason those 2 dates are asterisked on the side here is that within the environment plan, after a lot of back and forth with a number of different stakeholder groups, the survey for the window will be within the months of February and March. So whilst there's a 2-year period there for the survey period, the actual dates, once we applied all of our environmental controls, narrowed down to preferred timings of February and March. The survey duration, the maximum the activity will take is 40 days, with the number of acquisition days to be 30. If we were to have perfect weather conditions, no issues with the equipment, no issues in terms of working away at sea, very likely we could achieve the geophysical outcomes of the survey in a much shorter time frame than 30 days. But we obviously need to allow for those things that come up from time to time. So 30 days maximum acquisition and 40 days duration in total is the limits. I'll go through the slides relatively quickly, and what we'll cover today is a little bit of the current status and the next steps for the environment plan, which is the primary approval for this activity. I'll give an update on the public comment process that we underwent in March and June this year. We've got an update on the commercial fishers compensation protocol. We have met with DPIRD since our last webinar, so we have an update on some scientific studies that are likely to occur coincident with the survey, and a little bit about what happens next before going into the Q&A. Just as a reminder around some of our key protections in place for this survey, that we have made a commitment in the environment plan that the seismic source will not be operated within 300 meters horizontal distance from the 12-meter contour around the reef structures in the area, particularly in those shallower areas as you get closer to the coastline. And that's marked out there on the map that you can see on the slide. So it's Leander Reef, Big Horseshoe Reef, and some other unnamed reefs in the active source area. And so it excises the about 34 square kilometres from the area, about 4% overall of what we've currently proposed. And of course, it's the reason for that is these reef areas are likely to be areas where there's a higher abundance of marine species, and in particular, in this case, the protected and very commercially important Western rock lobster species. So the current status of the Eureka 3D environment plan, as you can see, we've taken quite a long time to do the consultation. It was quite a challenging consultation, simply because we had an initial period we thought that the activity should occur in, and we heard from various different stakeholders of different preferences of timing. And those changes in timing somewhat delayed the production of our impact and risk assessments. And so we obviously extended the consultation timeframe to make allowances for those changes, and to make sure that we could publish the information that we had promised, and people could have that information to consider as part of the consultations. So we eventually submitted the environment plan back in summer, so about February this year, and as a public comment was in March. Sorry, my error. I thought it was May and June, but it was in March this year. So after the public comment, we subsequently made some modifications, which I'll talk to in a moment, and we subsequently made a submission to NOPSEMA in June. NOPSEMA initially made a decision that they would need more time to make an assessment of the submission, and we understand that NOPSEMA will be making their decision in the coming week or two. That decision will be one of three decisions, which actually will be one of two, actually, rather than three here, but it's technically NOPSEMA can ask us for more information. They could accept the EP, or they could not accept the EP. And what that would look like in the event that they not accept the EP, they would issue us what's termed an opportunity to modify and resubmit. So there's one of the three decisions there. They can't just reject the environment plan outright. The regulations make a provision for Pilot Energy to have at least one opportunity to modify and resubmit the environment plan. So that's where we're at as of today. As I say, expecting an NOPSEMA decision in the coming week or so. Public comment. So 21st of February through to the 22nd of March, we received 25 public comments. Just in case you aren't aware, the public comment process is something for community members to be able to have their say, in particular being able to have their say directly to the regulator. So rather than having to go through consultation with Pilot Energy, folks can write directly to the government and make their representations there. And of course, as with the relevant persons process that preceded public comment, community insights have played an important role in contributing to the way that we're proposing to protect the environment in this area. The public comment requires that Pilot Energy produce a report on the comments that were received. So all 25 of those, some of them quite short and some of them much more detailed. And so the way that we're instructed to prepare that report is to aggregate the comments into key themes, such as impacts from seismic noise, or from, another theme might be greenhouse gas emissions or other things. And then we have to break that down further into specific matters within those themes. And then we have to make the report kind of anonymous, but provide the claims that were made during or from those submissions. What we're also required to do is then publish that report. So that report is now available on the NOPSEMA website. We've also published it on the Eureka website, so you can see that report in full. And you can, I won't go through all of the matters and claims. There were many of them when you break down the 25 submissions. But in that document, you'll also find a title holder's response to each of those matters and claims. Just as a summary, you can see the infographic on the left-hand side of the screen there gives you an idea of roughly the breakdown of the concerns. Unsurprisingly, the two main concerns were about the sound levels released from the survey and some of the consultation. So that's quite typical, and there were some other points as well. On the slide also, we've listed just kind of the 6 sort of major areas that we had to go away and do a bit more work, and some additional measures that have been put in place. The first one of those being to add a provision to the exclusion zones, which is that the seismic lines will not pass within 200 meters of those exclusion zones with an active source more than once in a 24-hour period. So it just means that there's no repeated exposure, and we extend those timeframes in those slightly more sensitive areas. We have, from the public comment period, we expanded the impact assessment of sea lions to include prey displacement, which was a comment that sort of pointed out some gaps in our assessment. So that was really good to see. The thing, there was some misunderstanding in some of the impact assessment work we produced on Western rock lobster, specifically about the spatial and temporal overlap of the survey with Western rock lobster life cycle stages, particularly with the whites migration and then early life cycle stages. So we've tried to sharpen our pencil on that a little bit. There was some feedback that we had been a bit unclear on why we needed the nodal area in the shallow water zones and what that part of the activity entailed. So that's been expanded upon and explained, and then greater clarity provided about the use of the ocean bottom nodes, just as people felt we'd been a bit ambiguous. And there was a few errors identified in the EP, some contradictory information and things. So very clear that the commenters had gone through in quite a lot of detail, and we really appreciate their input. One of the things, when we publish our environment plan on first submission, it's made available on NOPSEMA's website. We've made it available on the Eureka website. And what we've done is to prepare a report on consultations as part of the submission of the environment plan. That includes the ability for anybody to go through the summary of those records, which can be seen online. And I've got a little snip there of a document you'll see. And if you go to the NOPSEMA website and download this document as a PDF, and you were to double click on any of those tiny little paper clips you can see there, you'll get either excuse me, a PDF or an Excel spreadsheet of the full records of the consultation that we undertook. And so one of the things that we're offering to folks, if they want to see how their consultation records have been taken into account, all we need for people to do is reach out to us if they want to discover their person ID, because obviously the correspondence is anonymous. But if you want to see how your feedback was taken into account, please contact us via a method you've previously used, and we can give you your person ID so you can see the records that we've presented to NOPSEMA. Just a quick overview of what's actually now up on the Eureka website. So we now have the title holder report on public comment. We've done a little 2-page kind of infographic flyer on what we heard during public comment. So that PDF's up online. And we've also broken down the current submission into a number of different documents so you can, direct yourself to the areas that you're most interested in. Obviously, the environment plan as a whole is quite a large document. So we've published everything that we possibly can to just aid that transparency, and it's all now available online. I did mention a couple of other areas just to keep you appraised of. The first is progress with the compensation protocol for commercial fishers. We have adopted the NERA protocol, which is a protocol that has been proven to work here in WA over a number of years. And we were very conscious that the pot fishing method associated with the Western rock lobster fishery maybe isn't adequately taken into account in that document. So we've been working with the Western Rock Lobster Council, and we've commissioned them to provide us basically feedback on the NERA protocol as it relates to their fishery or fishers within the fishery. And yeah, broadly speaking, we're getting closer to an agreement on the contents of that compensation offer. For the purposes of the presentation, there's some details there that you can read through, and I should have said at the start, these slides, of course, will be available on the website as well. But the aim of the compensation protocol is well, first and foremost, it's a measure of last resort. We hope to be able to collaborate with the fishers so we can share the ocean together. But of course, we do recognise that we need to have that backstop in place if people are affected. And so the aim is to have no commercial fisher worse off as a result of our operations. There'll be more communicated with commercial fishers affected by the survey in due course. I mentioned we've also been contacting the DPIRD, so the Department of Primary Industries here in Western Australia, and we're talking with them about potentially repeating a previous study that they did for a seismic survey. I think it was in 2019, called the Xanadu survey. There was recently a piece of literature published about the outcomes of that survey, and in talking with DPIRD, they've identified a wish to repeat that experiment just with a larger sample size, and potentially run some other recapture studies associated with the Eureka survey. As we currently understand it, DPIRD will take a lead on that study, and Pilot Energy have offered to collaborate and figure out how we can work with DPIRD and hopefully other stakeholders as well, to further understand the effects of seismic on the Western rock lobster population in particular. So yeah, we're looking to collaborate with DPIRD and others, and again, we'll keep people appraised as and when we can, and obviously everything will be in line with how DPIRD see that study progressing. What happens next? So consultation sort of continues. Obviously, if people want to talk to us, then they should reach out. It's never too late. That's absolutely fine. The environment plan will be assessed by NOPSEMA. We are expecting a decision in the next week or so, and it's very likely that there will be multiple decisions from NOPSEMA in relation to this environment plan. It's too early to tell whether or not the NOPSEMA assessment process will impinge on our ability to acquire the survey in the February-March window in 2025. So we will monitor that closely, and whenever we make any changes or decisions or a need to communicate something that's different, we will do so via our newsletter, and then depending on the significance, we may also undertake further webinars as the need arises. So we will keep people up to date as to any changes that happen over the coming sort of 3, 4, 5 months as we lead into that first acquisition window. At that point, I'm going to offer the opportunity for people to have any questions, and I think I'm going to try and find a way of getting into the Q&A. Okay, so I can now see the Q&A and any live chats. So I think Q&A, yes. So I don't see any questions in the Q&A at the moment, and in the chat. Okay, we've got something in the chat here from Freya. Okay, so what traditional custodian groups have you engaged in consultation? So there's a number of traditional owner groups, both under the Native Title Act here in WA, but then there are also tribal groups as well. So there are sort of those two layers of traditional owners that we've engaged with. Mixed engagement from traditional owners, some really good positive engagements from the Watandi Littlewell Aboriginal Corporation, and we hope to continue that engagement with them. And we have also engaged with the Southern Yamachi folks, the Yuid folks, and a number of individuals within those organisations. It's still some work to do there, I think, particularly with YSRC. I think we had a meeting with them maybe last week or the week before, just to kind of iron out how it is we engage with them on an ongoing basis in relation to the survey. So yeah, a number of traditional owner groups. Once again, so I can't remember all of them, but the records are in the public domain. The organisations that we've engaged with are publicly available, so you don't need there's no ID issues there. You'll be able to see every group that we've consulted with, and you'll be able to see all of the records of engagement there with the traditional custodians. There's another question here. The compensation exclusion zones signal the inherently damaging nature of seismic blasting. How do you justify this damage as gas demand is in decline and we enter climate tipping points? So we do understand there are some concerns associated with the sound level discharges. We have put forward in our impact assessments that the effect, we fully understand and acknowledge those impacts from seismic. We have put forward a case to the regulator that those impacts are temporary, and they are very localized, and we don't see population levels effects from these activities. I don't agree that there is a decline in gas demand. I think there's actually an increase in gas demand in a number of places, and in fact, particularly here in WA with the domestic gas reservation policy, certainly gas demand is stable, and gas demand and energy demand more broadly and worldwide is actually on the increase. I think related to the last part of your question around climate tipping points, I'm at pains to point out that a seismic survey is actually exploring for gas deposits. It doesn't mean that they're going to be developed. In fact, it means we don't know what's there, which is why we're looking. And so, when we talk about the greenhouse gas emissions from developing these types of resources, there is an appropriate point in the future that those things will be considered. If the petroleum reserves are found, if those petroleum reserves are of sufficient quantity to be commercially viable, and if the project has a sort of pathway to being developed. So there's a number of ifs that make it quite hard for us to do in fact, impossible to do an assessment of what the effects from climate from this activity alone would be. There's a follow-up question there, which is the start date fixed, given that rock lobster impacts are still under investigation? Absolutely, yeah. So we've been working with the rock lobster fishermen and their association to understand the best time of year, and the consensus of the fishers that are most affected was that the February-March window was the best opportunity. There was some other windows that were looked at, but obviously we listened to the fishers who are directly affected. And so there's always more knowledge about the environment and the effects of seismic on various different species. I don't think we'll ever have a full set of knowledge to be able to undertake any activity with a full set of knowledge. There's always some uncertainty that has to be managed, and that's why we put protections in place like the exclusion zones, and why we do these really detailed assessments to understand and to try and make accurate predictions of what we think the impact will be. I will also say that a number of the investigations that are being undertaken are associated with the effects to individual rock lobsters, which of course are exposed to a 30% biomass reduction year on year from the fishery. What we're really pleased to see with the DPERS study is that they're looking at ways that they can extend that to understanding the effect of seismic on population dynamics and catchability. So there's some really good stuff that's being proposed there, and we hope to be able to find a way of collaborating and being part of those, those studies. There's a follow-up question, which is that the statement is seismic blasting is looking for fossil fuels, which science tells us the climate can't afford. It's a very damaging activity. We do understand people's concerns associated with the effects on climate, and I think the difference of opinion, between where we stand and the need for gas and the need to transition in an orderly and sensible way is probably our position. It's interesting, Siri. Thanks for that. And the science is absolutely clear on the effects of climate. I don't think there's any doubt there. I think the position, of course, is that life is not a one-dimensional equation, and we don't only have the climate to think about. We also have healthcare, the cost of living. We have, so that, from an economic side of things, we've got to think about that. From a societal side of things, and we're very aware that there's a huge difference of opinion in what to do about the effects of climate from fossil fuels. So we're certainly not sitting here discounting the science. We fully acknowledge it, but the reality is we do start playing in the area of opinion when we start talking about what the right thing to do is about that evidence, and balancing those competing priorities and understanding the trade-offs in the climate debate is very important. And an orderly transition away from fossil fuels is sensible. And I will say at the moment here in WA, we still have a huge part of our grid which is powered by coal, and there are measures in place from the government level down to transition us away from that. We're very much acknowledging that is the pathway. But we see gas demand, and particularly in the East Coast states, but also here in WA, we see quite a lot of gas demand coming up in the next 30 years or so. Not to mention that gas demand isn't just used for energy; it's used for a variety. For electricity, it's used for a lot of other energy purposes. I can see there's a few more. There's at least some typing going on, so I'll just wait and see if there's another question that comes through here. just while I'm waiting for that, if people do want to add anything to the Q&A or into the chat, then please let me know. We have a statement here, I think. So 80% of Australia's gas is exported, 95% of the profits go offshore. So this is no win for Australia. Yeah, I understand the statement. I think it's important that we think globally here, and there are a lot of disadvantaged people in the world who need energy. So I think there have been huge wins for Australia from industrial development, and a number of huge positives to come from. I think Australia is now the second largest LNG exporter, and we've definitely benefited quite significantly from the ability to be able to extract those resources. So, but I do understand the statement, and yeah. Okay. I see some more typing going on. We are over time, so thank you for those of you who attended. I'm happy to stay online and answer questions, but yeah, conscious of time if people need to go. But okay, so there's some further statements coming through just associated with the opinion of the marginal nature of those benefits and the lack of royalties and any taxes paid. Yeah, I understand the opinion. I'm not sure that I agree, but that's okay. We don't need to agree. Okay, a couple of people dropping off, but I'll hang on the line and happy to answer any further questions.